There he is.
Welcome to Culture Screen, where we analyze culture. In this episode, we are summarizing the 14th episode from Season 6 of the Sopranos series titled Stage 5. The episode first aired on April 15th, 2007. In the beginning, we see Chris's movie called Cleaver is almost finished. The team is preparing to screen it at New York City's meatpacking district, where the entire New Jersey and New York crews will attend. Chris feels they should proceed because to delay the movie by adding another scene or two would only mean Tony would have to pay more money. In the next scene, we see Johnny Sack's cancer has progressed into stage 4. He has undergone chemotherapy in order to fight back against the cancer, but none of it has helped him recover. When Johnny Sack arrives at his doctor's office, they speak about his condition and the chances he has at surviving. The doctor is upfront with Johnny and tells him that he may have up to 3 months to live. Johnny is shocked to hear the news, but he thanks the doctor for being upfront and honest with him. As soon as Johnny arrives back at the medical center, he is visited by his wife and daughter. When Johnny's wife sits down, she asks Johnny to share what the doctor told him. Johnny tries to avoid the topic, but she circles back to the topic and Johnny is forced to share that he is really sick. Johnny and his family begin to sob and they hug as the guard yells out to them that they cannot have any physical contact. Now that he is sick, he is no longer in a jail cell at the Federal Correctional Institution in Danbury, Connecticut, but is instead being held at the United States Medical Center for federal prisoners. One of the inmates in the medical center, named Warren Feldman, is a convicted murderer. Warren is an oncologist and he ends up asking Johnny for permission to review his medical records. In the records, Warren finds that Johnny has undergone 2 rounds of chemotherapy and he ends up telling Johnny that he may actually have a little over a year to live. This news brings joy to Johnny, especially since he was under the impression that he only had 3 months at most of life to live. When Johnny's brother-in-law Anthony stops by the medical center to visit Johnny, they start talking about Johnny's life insurance coverage. Johnny sets up his policy through Anthony so that Jeannie and his daughter Allegra can receive the money in monthly payments rather than in one large lump sum. As they continue speaking, Johnny asks Anthony about how he will be remembered in the streets. Anthony tries to give a positive answer by telling Johnny that he was a strong leader, but he ends up telling Johnny that some of the guys will remember him as a trigger-happy leader who became power-hungry after becoming boss. Johnny replies by saying that no one understands the job of being a boss unless they've been one, and that in the end, no one cares about the sacrifices a boss has to make. As we catch back up with Tony, we see he is heading out to pick up the newspaper, and FBI agents Harris and Goddard are waiting for him at the end of his driveway. As Tony walks down to reach for his paper, he sees their car approaching and he panics as if he were about to be whacked. He calms down immediately after seeing they are just agents. The agents end up reminding Tony that they are no longer working on the streets and are instead assigned to the counterterrorism force for the FBI. They ask Tony if he could provide any information he may have on any activity relating to their new assignment, but Tony reminds them that if he were to do that, he would essentially become a snitch and cooperator, and he walks away. When Tony goes to the kitchen, he yells at Carmela and tells her that he can no longer go get the newspaper and that their maid will have to pick it up instead. When Carmela asks why, he tells her that it is no longer safe for him to grab his own paper. In this scene, we see just how paranoid Tony has become. He feels like the walls are beginning to close in on him from every angle.
You'd be helping us a lot if you let us know.
I think there's a word for that.
Remember, I am summarizing this entire series, as well as other popular works of literature, movies, and TV shows as well. Subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next episode or series. Let me know what you'd like me to summarize in the comments section below. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter for additional content. Visit our merch store and support us on Patreon if you can. Doing this helps my channel out tremendously. I really thank you for your support.
It's a thankless job.
In another scene, the New York and New Jersey crews head to New York City to watch the premiere of Cleaver. We see everyone finds the film entertaining except Rosalie and Carmela at first. There is a scene where the character depicting Tony, named Sally Boy, sleeps with the protagonist's girlfriend. But in the end, Carmela ends up seeing it as a way of Chris insinuating that Tony did in fact sleep with Adriana. After the scene, most of the other crew members end up noticing the same thing. After the premiere, we see Albert Barisi is arrested for being far from his assigned parole location. Tony tries talking Phil into becoming the boss of the Lupertazzi crew as a way of stabilizing the prior conflicts between their crews. Tony knows that Johnny Sack is seriously ill and that there is a power vacuum in the New York crew that can only end up costing him a lot of money and possibly his life in the long run. Phil ends up refusing, claiming that he cannot take on the job of boss anymore due to his declining health. Back at their home, Carmela ends up confronting Tony about the film, and Tony again denies ever having a relationship with Adriana. Carmela counters by telling Tony that it does not matter what he thinks if Christopher feels like Tony slept with Adriana regardless. Carmela also points out how in the end, the protagonist ends up taking out Sally Boy with a meat cleaver, and that this is a way of Christopher showing subconsciously how Christopher yearns to have the ability to take revenge on Tony. Carmela goes as far as even telling Christopher to his face that she is upset with him for producing such a hit piece on Tony. She tells Chris that it is obvious the film was based on him and Tony, including the affair Sally Boy had with the protagonist's girlfriend. Christopher denies everything, of course, and he takes great offense at Carmela's accusations and ends up storming off. This does not stop Christopher from being afraid that he might end up facing blowback from Tony, and so he tries pushing back the blame on JT Dolan. But it doesn't work after Tony sees the bruise on JT's head, proving Chris forced him to take the blame in the first place. Tony ends up discussing this in his next session with Dr. Melfi. He tells Dr. Melfi that he always treated Christopher as his son, especially after his father passed away. He shares that he would take Christopher on rides with him, and is sad about the way Chris chooses to depict Tony for everyone to see in the movie Cleaver. Tony is hurt to know that Chris sees him as nothing more than a bully. Tony explains how Chris's father was his mentor and how he always looked up to Christopher's father. Tony hoped that Chris would end up respecting and loving him like he loved and respected Chris's father. But instead, Tony says Christopher wants to see him die. Dr. Melfi asks Tony if at some level it is possible that this is all in Tony's head and that he might in fact be reading into all of this. Tony responds by telling Melfi that he has been coming to her for years and as a result understands the subconscious very well now.
I know too much about the subconscious now.
In this scene, we see just how hurt Tony is by the film. From the start of the series, Tony is set on making Chris his protege. And now, Tony truly feels Chris may eventually turn on him or even worse, kill him, as he does subconsciously in his movie. As we catch back up with Johnny Sack, Warren has already told him that his cancer seems to be coming back with a vengeance and agrees with the original prognosis he received from his doctor of having at most 3 months to live at best. In another scene, while Jerry is with Silvio at a restaurant, he is taken out by a hitman sent by Doc Santoro as a way of solidifying his role as the new Lupertazzi crime family boss. While Johnny is laying in bed, Warren shares that Jerry was whacked and he asks if Johnny knew him. In a follow-up scene, we see Johnny is with his wife and 2 daughters. He begins to hallucinate about seeing his mother, reminding us of the dream sequence Tony had when he was in a coma. In the scene, Tony sees a shadow of his mother at the door, leading into the house representing hell. Johnny whispers to his mother as if he is seeing her. After this scene, Tony receives a visit from Anthony, who shares that Johnny Sack passed away in the morning. In the second to last scene, we see Phil Leotardo celebrating his deceased brother Billy's 47th birthday. He is seen talking to Butchie about how he blames himself for the disarray in his family and crew. Phil describes how when his family arrived on Ellis Island, they allowed the American workers to change their name from Leonardo to Leotardo. Phil sees this as the first transgression against his family. Phil reminds Butchie of how he did nothing when Tony Blundetto took out his brother Billy Leotardo. In the end, Phil promises to grab the leadership in his crew by the horns, and he pledges to fight back against all those who ever wronged him and his family in the past. In the last scene, we see Tony is at the christening of Kelly, Chris's daughter. In the end, the viewer sees the two hugging. Christopher is seen worried, while Tony feels betrayed.
It's about being boss. It's about being happy.
That was episode number 79, titled Stage 5. To watch the next or previous episode summary, click on the link in the description or at the end of this video. In the description, you will also find additional links for supporting our channel. I'll see you on the next episode. Goodbye.
Much like a child, a film has many parents.
We upload new videos every week, so subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit the like button as well. Click the notification bell to be notified of when we upload these videos. See you on the next episode of Culture Screen.